Welcome to the Hope Warrior Project podcast, where we bring you an extra dose of hope to help you get over the humps of life. I'm Stephanie Martino.
And I'm Lydia Zuniga, and together we are bringing you real stories of hope from real people. We believe by hearing other people's stories of challenge and transformation, we can all gain some hope for ourselves.
So if you've been looking to find and hold on to hope, you're in the right place. Join us on this journey as we all become warriors of hope. Hi, everyone. Today we have a special episode for Thanksgiving week. So we know this is the week of Thanksgiving. We're focused more on being grateful and thankful for things. You know, this time comes around every year and it just puts a little more emphasis on it. So we wanted to take some time and talk a little bit more about that. This year in particular, maybe it's a little harder to feel thankful or feel some gratitude, just, you know, if you've gone through a lot of hard times this year and loss. But we still believe that there is a lot of opportunity to be thankful and grateful for the things that we have. And so we just want to focus in on that week and share some of our experiences and kind of hit on 3 points in particular that we are really grateful for here at Hope Warrior Project. So, and we'll go into a little more detail on these, but one of them in particular is just being thankful and grateful that we were entrusted with this project. Lydia will talk a little bit more about it later, but this isn't something we just sat down one day and kind of drew up on a piece of paper and decided, hey, we're going to do Hope Warrior Project. It really kind of came through other ways and kind of out of nowhere. So just being thankful that we were entrusted with that. The stories that we have heard and connected to and been able to share with you all through this podcast. Amazing, incredible encouragement, lessons. So thankful for those connections and then the lessons that we've heard throughout. And then being thankful for the lessons we've learned in just trying to do this, right? The failures, the trying things and it didn't work, the funny things that have happened, the ups and downs, but you know, all of that is part of learning and growing. And so we're thankful for that as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about those in detail. But one thing I wanted to just mention real quick, that I think would be a good way to kind of start this off. Maybe it was last week, maybe about a week ago, we asked a question on our Encouragement During Uncertain Times Facebook page. And the question was, you know, let's start a thread of the good things that have happened to you in 2020. You know, we could probably list all the bad things that have happened. There's a big list of that, but let's focus on the good, right? And there were some amazing, wonderful examples of things that have happened in a year that has been so challenging, so difficult, pain and loss. So I just wanted to quickly share some of these. Someone said that now that they're working from home and their daughter is remote learning, they have more time together than they ever have. I mean, I know that's a challenge for parents, you know, because it's like totally interrupting your schedule, having kids working and going to school from home. But that was something that she shared was grateful for. Someone's son graduated from college, got a good job in his own apartment. That's always great. Someone shared that their baby came home in April from a 5-month hospital stay. And every day has been blissful since then. They're kind of in this protective bubble, which is providing a lot of time for them to just bond as a family, which was great. This person said that her husband and her took advantage of him being an essential employee and the good interest rates this year and purchased their first home together. How awesome is that? I mean, you know, the economy was a little down, but it gave great interest rates. So it provided this great opportunity for them to get their own home. I particularly like this one. The rescue that this lady volunteered at has saved and placed a record number of dogs this year. And I've heard a lot of people have said that, you know, you're stuck at home. What else are you going to do? Let's adopt a dog. So that's been a fantastic thing. Life slowed down and they got really close as a family. I think a lot of us probably could say that has happened for us. So something really that we can be thankful for. So I just wanted to share some of those because it was really nice to hear. And it just reminded, at least me, that so many good things have come out of this year that maybe we wouldn't necessarily think about or notice if we're watching the news and what's on social media. So I just wanted to share those. But before we get into talking a little bit more about those 3 points in particular we want to discuss, Lydia, I have to ask you, first of all, what's going on your Blackboard?
Yeah, sorry guys, I don't mean to have it be distracting, but we worked really hard on this weekend, me and my family, so I'm not about to erase it anytime soon probably, but me and my family just thought it was important for us to come together and talk about our family values and what's important to us and kind of just what our aim is to focus on, which I think ties really well in with gratitude, because I think that's what gratitude does for us. Is it helps us to recognize like the good things are happening, and then also to know that we want more of those good things to happen. So when we recognize them and are grateful for them, it attracts more of that into our lives. So a lot of our values come from gratitude, right? It comes from us experiencing things in our life that make us so happy and fulfilled and feeling like we're living with purpose. So I don't know, we just thought it was important as a family to like all be on the same page so we can like serve as a family and grow as a family. So it was this big project this weekend. And for those of you that don't know, my kids are young. The oldest one is 7, so 7, 5. And then obviously my 1-year-old Everest was not part of the conversation. But so it was definitely an advanced conversation, and my husband was kind of looking sideways at me like, what are you doing, like trying to talk to them about the purpose of life and all this stuff. But I'm like, you know what, the earlier the better. And I just want them to start thinking about how their actions affect their lives and lives around them, and like what our purpose as a family is on this planet. So I don't know, I thought I'd start the process. So that's what's behind me, is our values and how we're going to live them out, what behaviors we're going to focus on. So
I love that. I think that's so cool. I mean, talk about getting your children trained early. They're going to be so advanced in life skills. I love it.
I hope so. Yeah. Like when we were talking earlier, I was like, they're either going to be advanced or traumatized. I don't know, one of the two. Hopefully the other, the advanced and self-aware and,
Yeah.
But yeah, so our first point on this gratitude episode was being entrusted with Hope Warrior Project. And this word entrusted, it really is important to me because it just helps me with perspective. And about, oh gosh, I don't know, it's been a few years now. A few years ago, I did this like women's group Bible study, and it was all about like caring for your children and raising them in faith and stuff. And the course was called Entrusted. And like day one, I feel like that was the biggest impact that the whole like course had for me, was because day one was like about how your children aren't yours. You were entrusted with them. Like they're God's, they're God's children. And he just chose you to like be around while they're growing up, pretty much, and that he trusted you enough to be in their life and to guide them and to, just like nurture their life. And like, I just found that so amazing, because when you think about it, like when you babysit, when you watch somebody else's kids, like how do you act around somebody else's kids? It's completely different, right? Like you're so much more mindful about what you're saying. You're so much more patient. You like want to give them the perfect food, right? Like you just want to make sure they have this awesome experience while they're with you, so that when they go home to their parents, like they only have good things to say. And then when we're with our own kids, it's like, whatever, like we're just like trying to survive. And so I just found this mindset like so beautiful, that if you think about your children as not your own, and that you're just responsible for them, and that they're going to go back to God and tell him like what their experience was with you, that all of a sudden it's like, wow, like I need to step my game up, right? And I need to do my best to like listen to what God wants for these kids instead of like what I want. Right. So that's how I look at Hope Warrior Project. And just quickly, the backstory on it. to help you better understand is that I went through a very, very challenging time in my life where everything kind of blew up. Like everything I had built my life around collapsed because it was not sustainable. And I had to kind of start all over again, right? And part of that was like losing trust in myself because of this life that I had built that just all kind of felt like a lie all of a sudden. And I had to do like a lot of just internal, like just reflecting and figuring out like what is my purpose, what have I been doing like quote unquote wrong this whole time that like this happened. And so I did like a lot of work on myself, and I also had to turn to a lot of people for help, because I no longer trusted myself at that point, right? I was like, I'm doing something wrong. So I started turning to, public figures through like podcasts and books, but also through church, listening to sermons and all these things. I turned to and then like ways that you wouldn't expect people to really pour into me, like volunteers that really didn't know me or shouldn't have really cared so much, but would be vulnerable and shared stories with me. And so through that experience of kind of rebuilding my life and finding my true purpose instead of the one that I thought I was like on the right track with, I felt so inspired to like share what I was learning about life with other people, and to encourage people on their own personal journeys. Because once you get curious and you start asking questions instead of just making constant judgments of how things should be, or how like just instead of deciding like and making judgments, deciding I really don't know anything and I want to know. So opening yourself up, and that takes like encouraging people because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of challenges that we face. So I was at dinner with a friend, and I was kind of on the more healing side of my journey where I was able to kind of rebuild and pick up the pieces, and I felt good about the direction that my life was going. And I was talking to a friend who was going through a very similar situation. One of those big traumatic life events that it's like, I don't know, there's like that list of like the most stressful things that you can go through. It was on there, and she was experiencing it. And I just looked at her and I said, hey, like if you ever need a voice of encouragement, if you ever need somebody to just like be hopeful with you, or to just listen to you, let you vent, and like really know what you're going through, please like feel free to call me. And I said, because I'm a hope warrior. And in that, and we're not super close. So it was kind of like, it was just a weird moment when I said it. I was like, oh, that was like a weird thing to say. I started to get all judgmental of myself, and I felt like it kind of took, she was kind of surprised by it too. Like, what does that even mean? And so I just kind of brushed it off and was like, well, anyway, so yeah, let's get a drink. Like, I couldn't get it out of my mind, right? Afterwards, I told my husband about what I had said and kind of this awkward experience. And he was like, wow, that's powerful. Like, that's got to be something already. So we started Googling it, sure, there's like charities that use the phrase and stuff, but there was no really like legitimate brand or anything out there that was like big, so he was like, just go with it. Like, I don't know what this is, but it's something. So really it did feel in that moment like it wasn't mine. It felt like I was entrusted with it. It felt like God or whatever put those words in my mouth, and then not only put them in my mouth, but put them on my heart, right? Because after that, because we all say things that we're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but maybe it's not part of our purpose, right? We just weren't thinking. But then I couldn't forget about it, right? It was on my heart. And so I just started to pray, and I said, God, like, I realized that I didn't come up with this, and that you gave me this story for a reason, and this is yours. So like from now on, I'm turning to you on like what this needs to be. And that's really what Hope Warrior Project has been. And I shared my story with Stephanie, and, you know, tons of other people, but she was somebody that just right away her curiosity was sparked, and she was asking me questions and coming up with, she was texting me ideas like, what if you did this, what if you did this, what if you did this, and I was like, hey, what if like you helped me with this, because I have no idea what I'm doing. And you know, God, you know, she had her own story that God had put on her heart, so our worlds kind of collided, and we just felt so passionate about this idea of putting out more hope and encouragement into the world, because it's so needed, and it's had an impact on our lives and how we live every day. And yeah, that's the story behind it. And it's hard to explain what it is, because it's always changing, and we're always trying to listen and pivot and serve. And so the way that we're doing that now mainly is sharing stories, because that was something that on both of our journeys, I think we helped a lot. You know, in the personal development world, like the self-help, I hate that word because people hate it. Like, I don't hate it, but I hate it because people hate it. The self-help world, it's like these books are always like 5 ways to turn your life around, 10 ways to get over your ex. Like, it's always like the how-to. And as much as we're attracted to those things, I think stories are so powerful, because when we hear somebody's stories of transformation, we connect with them, and then we see ourselves in them, and then we're able to come up with our own 5 steps to turning my life around, you know. So it's like when you come up with something on your own, it has such a bigger impact, because it's just how our minds work as humans. Like, if we come up with something, we're like, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But you know, as soon as somebody tells you what you need, you're like,
right. Yeah. Don't you tell me what to do.
Exactly. And that's what I'm learning now, because through my journey, I was like, I gotta tell people that life could be so much easier if you think this way, if you do this, if you do that. And then it's like, it wasn't working, because people need to live it, right? They need to learn these lessons. And the best way to help people see it is through like sharing stories and experiences, and then also encouragement. So that brings us to our second point on how just grateful we are with the stories that we've connected through this project. So Steph, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I did want to mention too, so, you know, Lydia shared how, you know, this kind of came about from her experiences in that conversation at dinner, in that little awkward moment, right? Lydia and I didn't even know each other, I think maybe at that time that happened, right? We met each other at Lifetime Fitness in boot camp, okay? That's how we met, just kind of got to know each other. Had pretty much kind of just an instant connection. But then when she started talking to me about Hope Warrior, it's like that just kind of like drew us together even more. And as far as like, for me, I had been praying for years about, what am I supposed to do in this life? What is my purpose? You know, I've worked at, you know, my corporate job forever, but I knew like that wasn't really satisfying, that, you know, that deep thing in my heart, that thing that I'm supposed to do, that passion. And I've been praying, I've been researching, I've been doing, you know, the 5 steps to figure out your purpose in life. You know, I'd been doing all of that. And this really just came out of nowhere and just into my lap. And so for me, that was definitely an answer from God to my prayers. That took a long time. Okay, patience, gotta have some patience. But that was an answer to my prayer. And so that's where, for me, I feel so like entrusted with it, because it was something I feel like God then finally answered my prayers after so long, from someone that I barely knew at the time, you know? So it's kind of crazy how it all happened. And that's why I feel, because it's so crazy, I feel like that's where it's like, you know, it had to be God making this happen. And we couldn't have sat down and come up with this idea. So anyway, that's kind of like how it hits me in my heart when we talk about Hope Warrior Project. But on the stories, if you all think about, you know, when someone told you their story of something that happened to them in their life, do you remember that? Or do you remember, here's what you need to do to fix this problem? What sets in your mind and your heart? It's the story, because that's what we connect to. That's what Lydia and I, in our own personal lives, when people shared their stories with us of things that they had gone through, that connected with us and gave us hope. You know, when people would share their stories with me about things that they had gone through, you know, I went through a long infertility struggle for years, and I kept it to myself, and I didn't want to say anything, and it was very hard, right? But once people would share their story, and first of all, it just helped me to feel, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one going through this. Oh, so I could take a little bit of a breath. And then it just gave me some hope, regardless of the outcome. The hope is there that this isn't the end of the world. Like, this isn't the end of my life. It's a hard time that I'm going through, but I can get through it. And so that's for me, you know, like the story. So that's, you know, on our podcast, we love sharing these stories. I feel like there's a thread through all of them. And it's really this idea of people being able to kind of reframe the challenge into an opportunity. It looks different for everyone. How they got to that point could be very different. And a lot of times, you know, it can take a long time. It can take going through a lot of really hard things and difficulties of how we think about things, and we try to fix it ourselves and all this kind of stuff. But in the end, how people are able to just kind of shift that mindset, shift the way that they're looking at it, and then look at, okay, what can I learn from this? How can this make me a better, wiser person in the future? And so those stories have been so powerful for me, you know, just to listen to and to hear from people how they have overcome that challenge. And it doesn't mean life is perfect, right? Just because, you know, maybe you're on the other side of that challenge doesn't mean life's perfect and you handle everything that comes your way with grace and dignity all the time. You know, sometimes it still gets a little ugly, but every time we go through something, I think it just gives us that extra bit of strength and courage and hope that we can get through that next challenge. You know, this season, because we're in season 2 of our podcast, some of the experiences people have shared, probably, you know, a lot of people can relate to the challenges during, you know, COVID and quarantine, and how we can get so sucked into the negativity and the fear and the heartache and the, oh my God, now what? Oh no, in my schedule, now my kids are going to be going, you know, schooling from home, and I've got to work from home. I can't see my friends. I can't do all this stuff. But the opportunities that people have found, just like the statements I shared at the beginning, how it has provided opportunity for other things that maybe they would have never been had those opportunities if this hadn't happened. It's really a perspective shift. It's looking for the positive instead of focusing on the negative. And that is a choice we have to make. And that's where these stories really demonstrate that, you know, that people made a choice to do something different and to look at things differently. So, and we connect to them. And if you haven't listened to some of them, go back and listen. I mean, just the vulnerability. And I want to just make a statement here too. You know, a lot of times it's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary a lot of times to share that deep pain maybe that you've gone through. But I always say, if you think about the time when someone had shared that with you, the impact that it made on you, could we be willing to share our own stories and be vulnerable? That could then help other people. And so that's what we try to help people do on our show. So if you've got a story, which, well, you do, it's not an if, right? You have a story. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got something that they've gone through. If you'd be willing and interested in sharing it on our podcast, please reach out to us. I can't say enough how encouraged I've been. And Lydia, I know you've said the same thing, how encouraging it's been just to us personally, only for our own selfish reasons, to hear the stories. And it's been encouraging to us. And we've started looking at things differently and how we look at life. Just the last one that we've recently done, you're going to hear it next week, actually. I'll give you a teaser. This idea of shifting this question of what if this bad thing happens, shifting it to even if it happens, I can get through it. So that's your teaser for next week. You got to go listen to that episode next week. So yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic. And I'm so thankful that we have the opportunity to be able to help people share their stories.
Yeah, we've had some pretty big stories, I would say. And it's literally from like the people in our community or people that we've connected with through social media.
Yes.
Like they're not big names, like they don't have best-selling books or TV shows or anything like that, but it doesn't make it any less powerful and meaningful.
I
And
think it
that's
makes it more powerful, to be honest, because we can relate more to them. I can't relate to Tony Robbins. I'm sorry.
well, exactly. And I remember having like that aha moment where I don't remember exactly where it came from, but where it was saying that our biggest lessons are like people are our biggest teachers, like the people that God puts in our lives are our biggest teachers, and that we walk past so many people every day, and we just don't connect. We just everything's so surface level. Everything's, hey, how you doing? Fine. Oh, busy. Oh, gotta go. We're all in such a rush. And like just these kinds of conversations, they don't happen enough. And then we're going and like looking on YouTube, um, like at these influencers to find answers when really like we could totally just have conversations with the people in our own communities, and actually get to know them for real, because these influencers, like you're only getting a small percentage of who they are, obviously, because there's no way unless you spend tons of time with that people and have a relationship with them. But it just hit me, and then Stephanie had the idea of the podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, like yes, we need to just interview people because everybody deserves to have their story heard, and the world just needs it. Like we just need to hear how resilient people are. Like John, our pastor at our church, John Peacock, like a while back had a sermon, and he was talking about COVID, and I guess like he was in a checkout line, and he didn't want to be surface level with the person that was checking him out, and he like asked him like, how are you doing in this or something, or he asked him like something meaningful, and the person was totally like caught off guard and said that they were struggling or something. And I'll never forget, John said to him, well, good, I have good news, you're a human. And like humans are just incredibly resilient.
Yeah.
And you're going to figure this out. And I just thought, wow, like that's
Yeah.
so true. And I love to hear the different ways that people reframe, like you said, their challenges to opportunities, and then how they're able to turn things around and then like make just meaningful changes in their life that like they wouldn't have the opportunity to do without the challenge that was placed in front of them. And then it's awesome, because then we could take that with us, and even if we never face the same challenge, we'll remember that resilience. We'll remember those tools that person shared with us. We'll remember their story, and we'll say, she did this, like maybe it can work for me, like I'm gonna try it. And so it's been awesome, and I'm so grateful for, like Stephanie said, every single person that has shared their heart on the Hope Warrior Project podcast, because it's not easy. It's not easy to put yourself out there to be judged, and to let people know like what you've been struggling with. And also I think it's not easy because a lot of times people think that they have to have it all figured out to share their story. And I know I feel that way a lot of times too. Like you kind of feel like an imposter, when you're like, oh, I got through this challenge and now I'm great.
Right.
I'm doing this, and this, and everything's great. And then you're like, oh, well, if they only knew like this part and this part. And it's like, that's another beautiful thing about life, is that we're never finished.
Right.
And then the day after you record that episode saying how great you are, like something else might pop up, and that's life.
Yeah.
But reflecting on your story, recording the episode and sharing it would actually equip you more to face the next challenge.
Exactly.
You'll remember, I got through that, I could get through this.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just get goosebumps like talking about it, because it's just really like filled me up. And I hope it's doing that for our listeners as well. So we're gonna keep going, but we need people. We need stories to share.
We need guests.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Stephanie said, you have a story, it matters. And also like a lot of people, I think another thing that holds a lot of people back is like they feel like they're not great communicators or storytellers, or you feel like you have to have some sort of special public speaking talent, or like how you're going to frame your story. Our stories are so complicated, and complex, and there's so many moving parts that sometimes it's hard to like narrow down one, right? Because they're so intertwined that it's like, well, you won't understand this if you don't understand that. If you don't know this, then you won't know that. So Stephanie and I have, I think, gotten pretty good at like just talking with people and then like narrowing it in. Like, what can we share with people that they can really take away so that it's not all over the place, you know, like what was the biggest lesson or the biggest challenge. So if you're feeling like you have a story but you have no idea where you would even start, we do have a process for that. So I just want to encourage you there that that we do help with that.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that brings us to number 3, which is that we're so grateful for the lessons that we've developed by just trying to figure this thing out. And I love that about us, Stephanie. Like, I love that we just approach this as we're figuring it out and we want to do what God wants it to be. And we're not, I mean, not all the time, right? And in the beginning, and I think we're getting better and better at this, like not putting so much pressure on ourselves to always win, always like hit the nail on the head, right? Like we're trying things, and if it doesn't work, like that's a lesson. We figured out that that's not the direction we want to go, and we know to pivot. We anchor our one foot in what we feel like our purpose is and what the purpose of Hope Warrior Project is. And then other than that, like we're super willing to change direction in terms of specifics on the how, right? Because we know our why. We want to encourage you. We want to cheer you on your journey of figuring out what your purpose is and living your best life. And however we can do that, we're down.
Yeah.
But like I said, that has taken a lot of trial and error, a lot of seeing what works, and a lot of laughing at ourselves and being
crying.
Yes. Sometimes being like, why is this happening? And why do I even do this? Why do I even care? Yeah, it's been quite the journey, but it's I mean, I wouldn't change it I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I've learned so much doing it, and then just the meaningful connections within themselves. If that's what comes out of this, it's like that's priceless.
Yes, exactly. And I remember when we first got started. So I mean, first of all, for me to even think about, you know, being an entrepreneur, having my own business was so far away from anything I ever thought I would ever do in life. You know, I've been a corporate America gal forever. And in the years past, you know, when anybody would raise a question about, oh, what about, you know, starting a business or whatever, I'd be like, no way, I would no. So the fact that I'm even doing this was a huge step for me. But again, I think that goes back to how it happened and the answer to prayer. But I remember when we first got started, just having to remind ourselves and tell ourselves, like, it's okay to fail. That was a new way of looking at things, and just continually saying it's okay to fail. Failure is actually learning. The only real failure is just to not to do anything, right? So you try something, it may work, it may not work, it may be a complete bust, it may just need some tweaks, but it's the trying, you know, trying something, see if it works. And that's where, again, I think we're really trying to feel out what this is going to be. I don't know that we don't have it fully figured out right now. I'm actually really excited to see what the future holds. You know, what is Hope Warrior Project going to be, you know, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I think it could look completely different. I don't know, but it's exciting. It's also scary, but it's fun. And so in life, we have to be also willing to just fail. And so I think we're learning life lessons as we are going through and trying to figure out, you know, what this is. And we, like you said, Liddy, we've had some times where we've been able to laugh at ourselves and been like, oh my Lord, what we were thinking. You know, recently we were doing a pre-recording of like our intro and like the ending statement, you know, for the podcast. Okay. So we're sitting, you know, at my desk here in my office, and we're recording and we've got our little, script of what we want to say. And, we record multiple times because we always mess up. But in particular, there was this one where we were recording, and we'll share it here in just a second. I made a funny face or something. And Lydia thought I was choking. And so it's just, we captured it. I think it's fantastic. We actually captured it on recording because it's funny, and it just gives you a little example of some of the craziness that we go through. That's just a little sample. So we'll share that here.
Thank you for joining us today. Go take a listen to our other episodes. We think you'll be encouraged and inspired by what you hear.
If you're interested in sharing your story of hope on this podcast, please contact us at hopewarriorproject@gmail.com. We love the opportunity to help you share. What is going on?
My phone made a noise.
And I'm like, is she choking or? So yes, that is an example of how we can just have fun, but then also just not take ourselves so seriously, and how we can also take that into our everyday life. Like Stephanie said, is that when we mess up and it doesn't go perfectly the first time, it's like, it's okay. We're human, and that's part of life. And like, it's something that I say with my kids all the time. Like, mistakes help you learn. Like, when you focus on the failure, like, it's not going to serve you. You have to focus on the lesson. Right. And that brings me back to also gratitude, is that there's so much, no matter who you are, if you are breathing on this planet, there's so much that you can be grateful for. And if you focus on that, you will have more of it. It's just how life works. What you focus on, that's where your energy flows. That's where your mind subconsciously guides you towards. And there's just more of it. And it's hard to explain, but I've lived it. I know Stephanie has too. And so this Thanksgiving week, like, we just encourage you to focus on the gratitude, right? Figure out your own practice. We're not going to tell you 3 ways to do this, 2 ways to do this. We want you to just take a moment and think, how can I be more grateful? What can I do? Can I write stuff down? Can I talk to myself in the mirror in the morning? Can I record myself? Can I just meditate or take a moment to even think about it intentionally, right? Because so many times we're just going through life. So you figure that out for yourself, but I'm telling you, it is one of the best things that you can focus on, is what you already have that is just beautiful and that you are blessed to have. But that is all we have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for this kind of special episode that goes off of our regular format of sharing stories. But next week we will be back to sharing stories. And like Stephanie mentioned, we already interviewed someone really incredible that could have really easily given up on herself and decided not to. Decided to do what she needed to do, to ask for help, to reframe her mindset, to put in the hard work, to turn things around and look at that challenge as an opportunity. She really did, and we're excited to share that story with you next week. So catch us same place next week to hear her story. Thanks for listening.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Go take a listen to our other episodes. We think you'll be encouraged and inspired by what you hear.
Are you interested in sharing your story of hope on this podcast? Contact us at hopewarriorproject@gmail.com. We'd love the opportunity to help you share your story.